So what is the one cause of healing? The cause of healing is the only cause of everything, period. So what is that?
Love.
Yes. It's the recognition that nothing exists but love. That's the one cause of healing that is. And it has but one effect. What is the effect of love?
More love.
Yes, exactly, Mary, exactly. More love.
What a wonderful thought to realize that we all have a lot of different definitions of I am as God created me, but just the thought that what God has created as me is perfect love is one I like. It feels good.
Love created me like itself.
Yeah, that's what I am, God's love.
You are. I know that.
So the more we choose to experience love, the more love that we're creating. Why don't we do it more?
Actually, what it is, the more love that we give, or the more that we try to allow ourselves to be in that place, the more we recognize there is nothing else. Kind of makes us wonder why we ever do anything else, huh, John? That's another lovely effect of love. It always connects. It always joins. So that's how we get there. That's how we get from one dream to another. To first accept responsibility for making the one that we're in. And how do you accept responsibility for making this dream?
Quit blaming everybody else.
Quit judging. Quit judging someone else for what you think is wrong. This world, this entire world is causeless. It is an effect. How major a distinction is that? I can't look outward into the world and see anything that has any meaning because it's just an effect.
Of a mistaken belief. Of a mistaken belief.
Of a mistaken belief. And all of this happens because we think we can look into the world and make plans to control it, and that just will take care of everything. But what's going on out there? Nothing. Nothing's going on out there. Now you understand why the healed mind cannot plan.
If you wake up a child having a nightmare, if you do it too quickly, they are fearful of that which wakes them up. And so that we're already afraid of God, and if we just clicked over, we would not recognize love. From coming from an ego place to the love of God, it would be extremely fearful if we don't make this transition through the happy dream.
I know we've been told that when we transform or leave our bodies that our spirit will still recognize other spirit that we have loved. Is that correct?
Oh, yes.
So she says, what about animal spirit?
What's the difference?
It's the same.
It's the same. See, the truth, honey, is that we don't recognize one another from our physical presence right now. No, we really don't. The only recognition we have is of our spirit self. But of course, we make our bodies look different. We make our activities look different. So we'll have some basis for believing we are different. But that's all.
So the love I feel, for example, my husband passed 10 years ago, that love would find his love at some other level.
It already has, and there isn't any other level. I share with you kind of an epiphany that Linda and I had this morning in our quiet time. I was sitting pretty much contemplating why it seems that I always find it so easy to get wrapped up in my misperceptions. What would it take for me to more easily recognize a call for love? As the Course says, that's our only option. You either see an expression of love or a call for love. So what would it take for me to become more familiar with that? And I started thinking how much time I spend trying to convince myself that I am not the character in this dream of sin that we keep having about one another and about ourselves. I'm not really that, but how much time I spend trying to constantly get myself out of that rut. And it was amazing when I look back how much time I actually spend doing that. And the thought came to me, what if I redefined all of this story as an adventure of love? And I could just feel my spirit start to lift. And then the thought came to me, in truth, you are the adventure of love. And the more I sat with that, the freer I felt. It was as though I could redefine this whole scenario. Instead of spending so much time trying to lift myself out of that hole of sin and separation, I could just begin to see this as an adventure in loving. Even the times when the pain seemed to become predominant. That's just another adventure in moving along. So, I couldn't wait to get here today and ask you all to join me. I just decided today that's going to be the title for my book that I'm working on. Yeah. Thanks, John. Thanks. Yeah. So let's all kind of take a pledge. We're familiar with pledges, huh, Brian?
Oh, yeah.
We'll take a pledge to help each other remember that the only thing that's going on is that we're having an adventure in love.
I'm thinking when you hear profound, you start attaching all these huge meanings to it, but it actually can be pretty simple, huh?
Yeah.
You don't have to make it difficult.
That's so true, Patty. There's a feeling in my heart that when I feel close to God, nothing seems beyond me. But most of the time when I'm feeling bad about myself, I'm, in one form or another, I'm trying to forgive myself or forgive God or forgive somebody for something, and then it all seems to be out of proportion. But when I bring God in, as those two little Asian kids said, to sit with me a while, what then is profound? Everything becomes so simple. Could there be anything more simple than surrendering to love? Could there be anything more difficult?
I think that God created itself actually knows what's behind Donald Trump.
Yes.
It's nothing to do with what we experience.
No. And the beauty of that, of course, is that as soon as I recognize that I can love him, that he is not the character in his story, then neither am I. But every time I judge him for what he does in his story, I am the character in my story. I become that. It still amazes me. 30 years. 30 years. And the whole still seems to be so enticing. Doesn't it? Doesn't it still feel good to just delicious to judge someone? I mean, to look at him making such an ass of himself and say, oh, wow, look at that. It's so tempting, so utterly tempting. We make fun of it, but it's what we do. Unfortunately, it is how we think, but we do have access to a different way of thinking. The miracle establishes you dream. What does that really mean? What does that really mean to dream a dream? It begins with a premise. In this case, we're being told the premise isn't true. But it begins with a premise, and then its thoughts just embellish that premise to the point of creating a story. And that's the dream. When we go to bed at night, we forget entirely what's happening in our waking state. And we assume a premise. We take a thought. And they're usually the most weird, crazy thoughts by our perceptive evaluation when we're waking. So my question has always been, if that's true when I go to sleep, how would I be seeing this if I didn't believe now in the object of sin? How much of my dreams do I continue to just wrap around that idea? And what would it be like if I didn't? Could it be, really, could it be that I would see this dream as foolish, as obviously nonsensical as I see those other dreams? Well, it must be. That must be exactly the case. As Brian said, where you left off the night before, with the belief, continuing the belief that sin and separation were real. Could there be any thought that came to you that was real? Could there be any thought that came into your mind?
A loving thought.
Follow that thread, Sam. But here's where I'd like to suggest you follow that thought. Not just to follow the thought of love, but to recognize that the moment the thought of love entered your mind went from dream to truth. For the very reason that we said a moment ago. The ego does not know of the choice for love. Just doesn't know it. It's not there. It's not part of the belief. So when your mind shifts from fear to love, you have fundamentally shifted into the realm of truth. Now, whether or not you let the ego embellish that thought, or whether you continue to allow that thought to be moved through the presence of the God self, that's a different matter. But you have given yourself that opportunity. When the thought of love comes into your mind, you've given yourself the opportunity to switch from dreams, from illusions to truth. So you recognize now what the opportunity is. Now when the thought of love comes into my mind, I can say to the God self, carry on. Carry on. Let's take a closer look at this. But I'm admitting that my mind has shifted into that new awareness that it didn't know about before.
Yeah, and I've often also noticed that it has interesting reverberations. That is, it's not just the thought. Yeah.
But the beauty of it, Sam, is that where you are now, you have learned to direct that, to allow that to happen, to make that more conscious.
Especially having been in this group.
I would suggest that it's primarily happening because of your choice to go where you really want to go, which is to the loving self. So whether it's this group or any other group or no group. You're going to find that wish fulfilled. That's the way it has to be. Because that is the only thing that's happening. Do you see? That is the only thing that's happening, is that our mind is self-fulfilling. That's what mind does. So when we're conscious about it, when we know there is a God plan, so to speak, we can allow the self-fulfillment to take on something with real purpose.
And so in those moments that I'm way out there in the ego and in the world, if I stop long enough, take a deep breath and think of my dog, I can get centered and I can go to love immediately. And then I can make a right choice.
Is there a thought of someone else who could do the same thing for you?
No.
Why?
Because he's just so pure. You know, they love us unconditionally. And as humans, we don't know how to get there.
Let me make a suggestion to you. That's your perception of your dog. That's your perception of there being something in your life that can be wholly, totally loving. And you have the power to do that for anyone. And when you can do that for anyone, only then will you know what's true about you. So frequently we empower our animals because they are such willing mirrors for feeding back to us what we're giving to them. They don't have the reluctance not to do that. But you see, if there were someone that you had trouble with, you could empower them the same way. All of us need to remember that. We give all of the meaning to all of our thoughts, to all of our relationships. We give all of the meaning they have. And if we became willing to see them all as an opportunity to love, every single one of them as an opportunity to love, we would one by one begin to uncover all of the unlovable parts within ourselves. That's the beautiful release of forgiveness. You are the holy child of God. What could be more powerful than that? Don't thank me, honey. God made you. It is to me, such a good feeling to know that I don't have to awaken before I can let myself be free of the fear of the dream. He talks about in the Holy Spirit's forgiving dream, we are released from the effects of our unforgiving dream. What a beautiful gift. By moving into the awareness of the God Self, the Holy Spirit, and seeing his forgiving dream, in other words, a dream that doesn't have any meaning, we can have the effects of our unforgiving dream undone. So it's not like we have to move through this whole incredibly thick veil of darkness before anything positive can happen. We just go to the Holy Spirit and say, let me see it like you do. Now, let me see what you see. Oh, I never saw it that way. Okay, well, you see, now we can let the effects of our unforgiving dream be undone for us. Well, then I'll share with you an experience that I had about 3 days ago that was an awesome lesson. It was just absolutely an awesome lesson. As I found myself totally outside everything that I've ever tried to share with anybody. Give you a little background. It was the morning where we were studying the lesson, Let Miracles Replace All Grievances. I'm preparing to do the exercise that the lesson suggests, and I'm thinking, geez, I can't really think of anything I'm holding a grievance about. brother comes back immediately and says, well, you might want to take a look at that thought you have about yourself that's raised because of your seeming inability to heal your body. And I said, well, so I went into a meditation about that, and it came to some nice resolution. So I asked, I said, is there anything more that would be good for me to take a look at? And I'll tell you, the thought was not out of my mind before the phone rang. More background. We've been getting a lot of calls, spam calls, from people who, want you to pay money to for whatever. And so I was thinking to myself, or I have been thinking to myself several weeks ago, what's a good answer to come back to these people with that might also help them or encourage them to rethink what they're doing? And I thought, well, since most of the accents are Eastern, maybe what would be helpful would be to ask these people if they were familiar with the laws of karma. That what they were putting out for someone, they were going to get back themselves. That sounds good. My ego's doing all that's all background. So a couple of times I've had that come up, and I ask if they're familiar with the laws of karma, and the phone just goes click. Yeah, maybe you're onto something here. So, okay, all of that's background. Now here's the morning. I'm trying to find grievances and so forth and so on, and the phone rings. So I come out of my meditation, I pick up the phone, and it's a person who is calling me with an Eastern accent, who is calling me from Reader's Digest to let me know of the big prize that I have won. I said, are you familiar with the laws of karma? There's a pause, and he comes back and says, well, I know your karma. I said, what's that? He said, I will kill you. I said, you will kill me? I'm repeating this because Linda's sitting there and I want her to get both sides of the conversation. I said, you will kill me? He said, what? You think this is a joke? I will kill you and eat you like a dog. I am so stunned for a moment. I've never... And the thing that is stunning me is that I have never felt such a depth of self-hatred. I know I'm a voice on the other end of the phone. There's nothing about me he can hate.
No.
There's just nothing there. I mean, that's nothing that would even be available to him. So this hate is coming from something he has generated for himself. So I said something like, well, I always try to listen to everything a brother would say to me. And he said, your brother, ha. Now he hangs up. So Linda's sitting there patiently. I hung up the phone. I looked at her. I'm just stunned. And she said, well, what do you expect after the way you attacked him? Attacked him? I was just attacking him. There was no love at all in my intention. No love there at all. I was trying to correct him. I was trying to help him see the error of his ways. You would think in 30 years I might have learned a little better than that. So, fortunately, I am still in good enough shape to go inside and say to brother, what do I do with this? And he said, see the light of Christ in everyone you know. And I said, could you show me? And a face came into my inner mind, which I presume would have been the face of this man. And this heavy, heavy feeling of self-hatred came along with it. I looked at that for a moment, and then I felt the face just start to dissolve. And with it, the idea of the heaviness, it just went. And it was just totally gone, and in its place came this beautiful, beautiful light. And I felt myself so in love with this presence. It was just a perfect illustration for everything that you were talking about, Sam. Changing your mind and how everything changed. It was just incredibly beautiful. And I'm sure there's still more to come. Like this morning, I was thinking, well, I've always had these lovely feelings that we as a consciousness we're getting to the end of our need for separateness and so forth. And Brother said, it's not that you see less fear. What you're coming to the end of is the belief that what you're seeing is real. So the ego will still present you with all of these opportunities to taste what did we call it the other day, how delicious it felt to judge. But you can believe in them less now than what you've ever believed in them before. Anyway, I'm sure there will be more that will come up. And I would invite you, because I know we've all, whether it's someone who annoys you because of their erratic driving or whatever, we all have these experiences. We all need to see that there is a different way to see. And we can. I would maybe describe it like this. Yes, we are telling a story, and as always, we will experience the effects of the thoughts we have. That's the nature of the experience of mind. In this particular case, we seem to be experiencing those effects in a world, in differences, in form, as bodies, and so on and so forth. But we have the opportunity, in every case, in this story, to either look at the story and believe in it and let it carry us farther from the truth, or to take that story to the God self and say, show me how to see this in a way that it leads me to the truth. I could have sat back, would have, before I ever discovered the opportunities that exist in the Course. I would have sat back and said, well, that son of a, calling me on my phone. No. I foolishly had made the choice to try to correct his ways. But I could see that then, because of the work that we've done. I could see that that's what I had done. And I knew there was another way. And so I asked. And the story that had been presented of fear was transformed. And it led me back toward the truth instead of continuing to lead me away from the truth.
It's also a recognition that cause is not out there.
Yes, Sam.
Right.
That's the one, as we've said many, many times, that's the one responsibility we have to take.
Mm-hmm.
I am the cause of the world I see.
As Donald Trump's sitting there thinking, I don't agree with probably much of what he says. I mean, it just isn't who I am. But what really baffles me is the support he's getting from the number of people. That's what I don't understand, and I say, why? I mean, because there's not just one group of people, it's all kinds of people from all different areas are supporting him.
I have a theory. My theory is that the ego will always respond to us as strongly as it feels threatened. And in the moment, or for the last bit of time, we have been threatening the ego. We have been changing. We have been allowing love to become the answer to more of our questions. We have been doing that. And so the ego is responding in the world, everywhere in the world. Look at all of the things that are happening, all over. In all of the different ways that the ego is saying, wait a minute, what is this nonsense about giving up fear? About becoming joined? For Pete's sake, could you join with Donald Trump? Could you join with this Assad? Look at how many opportunities we have to take a look at all of that and decide. And that's really the opportunities that we've been asking for. But all of a sudden they're coming back to us and we're saying, wait a minute. That's not what I meant. What is the way that we erase the rungs of the ladder, so to speak? When you accept a miracle, how do you accept the miracle? You do not add to the dream. How does that happen? That's the process of forgiveness. That's the moment that you say, wait a minute, there's another way to see this. I'm going to let go, I'm going to forgive, I'm going to let go of the way I see it, and I'm going to accept into my awareness that there is a different way for me to see it. And when you see it differently, because we are all a part of this consciousness we're talking about, that consciousness changes. It was such a perfect illustration of how, literally how, you let a miracle, a change of mind, replace a grievance. Now, what was my grievance in that situation? Obviously, I felt threatened by what he was doing. Or I wouldn't have come up with this neat old idea why he ought to change. If there was no threat at all, I could have simply offered him a loving presence. What makes you feel invulnerable? No, what would it be that would make you feel invulnerable?
I am love.
That's it perfectly, honey. That's it exactly. When you feel loved, you are invulnerable. So, what's the answer to somebody who calls me who feels very vulnerable to fear? Fear can cover up love momentarily, but fear cannot do away with love. But the opposite is true. Love can cancel out fear.
I know someone who lives in Lesbos, the island where a lot of the refugees are coming.
Yes.
And I know a lot of the personal stories of those people, how she's helped. You know, the babies that come in and they've died, and it's really horrible, horrible things. And I feel really a lot of sadness for that. Is that fear then?
Yes. Yes. It's the fear that it's real, and that there will be some other form of fear that will overtake you. That's always the choice we make when we are looking at something and saying, what is the hold that this has over me? And that's why I suggested, honey, that when something like that begins to get its hold on you, it's far better not to just say, well, I'm not going to go there, but to go to the God Self and say, take me there, take me to the heart of this. The heart of this thing that seems to be so fearful, take me there and show me this is not the reality of God. That's how we change it. I can remember the first few times that I've asked Brother to do that, when I felt such intense fear, and he would say, let me take you there. I'd say, well, okay, but boy, I could tell you, he wasn't taking me anywhere. I'd let him think he was, but he wasn't taking me anywhere. It was very fearful, because I was being asked to examine the source of my fear, which I was convinced was real. But once I began to let that happen, once I began to visit that place where fear lives in me, I could see in his presence, and I never recommend you doing this without the presence of your God Self or brother or something, but I could see what I had been afraid of was my perception. That's all. My story. It was just my story. There was nothing there to fear. And I still do that. I still have those moments, as I just shared with you earlier. So we continue to do that because we continue to allow ourselves to live, so to speak, in the murkiness of this story. You know, we wouldn't, any of us, even continue with the story if we really wanted out of it. If we really wanted out of it, it would be done. There is no moment that any two of us come together for any purpose or situation whatsoever that is not fulfilling the purpose of God. Those moments don't exist. The Course says there are no coincidences, there are no accidents. Well, what I'm telling you is just another way to say that. There is no moment when any two of us come together that is not an opportunity to know the presence of God. How many times do I allow myself to give it that meaning?
Is that because when two or more people come together, you feel the love for each other? Is that what you're saying?
That's another way of saying it, yes. If we come together without a defense, what we bring to the encounter is love. If we come together without a defense, the only thing we bring to the encounter is love. But the only thing we see, if we have a defense, is the defense, which clouded our vision of the love. It didn't keep the love from being there. It didn't change the purpose of the situation. What I was trying to say to you a moment ago, Mary Alice, you join your brother in that place, that gap, that fearful sense of who he is and who you are, where lack and fear and hate, all of that exists. You come together there. And when you come together there, you dissolve it all. You see, it can't exist when you come together. It can only exist, as he said when we began this section, when you join somebody in the fear, then the fear becomes real. But if we join them in their sense of being loving, that's what's real.
Yeah, I practice that with around me in my not big things that are happening in the world. I practice that and I ask for that guidance every day.
Oh.
But I don't ask for the guidance, these things I call big out there, and that's what I should be working on.
Bring them in, honey. They're only as big as your resistance to them.
Because I think I'm doing really well until I, with my daily life. But until I get to that.
Welcome to the club. That's where I was when that 3 mornings ago when I said, I really can't think of anything I have a grievance about. Well, one thing that would make me giggle a lot is to see our dear friend Carolyn back. How are you feeling, honey?
Almost 3 months, 2.5 months. Fractured vertebrae in my back.
You and I being somewhat in the same boat.
Yes.
I'm coming more and more to recognize how much my dependence upon the exterior medical community, let's say, has not done a heck of a lot to make me any better.
No.
So
No, I don't think.
maybe there's another way that would work better for us. And I'm not by that. I'm not trying to imply that what we're here to do is to heal our bodies. Because we're not. That's not what healing is.
No, that's not going to
Didn't I put
happen.
that in the post today? I posted today that healing is not about the body. It's about healing the thought of sin in our mind. And a nice little message that came to me in my meditation this morning. And then right after that, Brother said, "It is upon this that all heaven waits." It is upon this. In other words, the awareness of choosing, heal our mind of the thought of sin. That it is upon this that all heaven waits, upon our making that choice. And that felt so right. I was just sharing with Tom 2 minutes ago how many times I have been confused about asking myself. As Carolyn knows, we sometimes go through these periods where the COPD gets a good hold of you and you're not sure if you're going to be able to keep breathing. And so I would ask myself, is this the time I've chosen? Is this the time I've chosen? Oh, I don't know. Is this the time I've chosen? And it all you get kind of messed up, or I got kind of messed up. So I decided that the better thing for me to do was to trust myself to God's plan. If God's plan is for my awakening, and that obviously is going to determine the time that I decide to set my body aside. And so rather than me make that choice, because I don't know about the other choices that I need to make for my awakening, why don't I just wait and let God make it and tell me? So each morning when I awaken, I say, and it's not about, is today the day? It's like, help me to see today what your plan for me really is. And I have perfect faith that when that day arrives, that will be the day, then I'll know. And then I don't have to decide. And that also, honey, kind of helps me know that God is here with me now as well as then. Because if He is orchestrating, He, being our God self, is orchestrating the plan for our awakening, then He must be present in every instant. Plus the fact that it's not a bad habit to get into, to awaken each morning with a little conversation with God. I had an experience in another meditation not too long ago where I was just thinking, wouldn't it be nice if my ego, this part of my mind that's always seems to be objecting and resisting and pulling back when I want to move forward, and the thing we call an ego, this idea of conflict in our mind, wouldn't it be nice if that could just be with me instead of seeming to be against me? And Brother said, when you have forgiven yourself, this idea in your mind that you call an ego, you will then feel comfortable in calling love. When you have forgiven yourself. Isn't that interesting? The ego can only survive, in my mind, on my judgments. And when I have forgiven myself, what is there left to call it ego? A key word. Love is one, and it joins everything in its sight of being one. I remember 25 years ago when this was all beginning, so-called channeling thing was all beginning for me. We were invited to go do a sharing somewhere we'd never done. I had never done one before. I kept saying, well, what am I going to talk about? What am I going to talk about? I don't know anything to talk about. And then I thought, oh, well, good, I can rely on Brother. He'll just channel. All I'll have to do is listen. Boy, won't that be easy? And oh, no, what if he doesn't say anything? Well, finally, I said, what do you want me to do? And he said, how about you just show up? What?
Yeah.
I said, trust me, show up. And I've always remembered that and used that. And you know, if I had to prepare something now to go to a group, I would be petrified. But I do know that if I just show up and do exactly what Tom was describing, just check in. What needs to be said will be said. I think, Sam, there's another thing going on that would be very beneficial for you to check in and see what's happening. this sense that you have of always, as you pointed out, wanting to be special is not really about you always wanting to be special. And that's what you need to check in with, to see what it is that is really motivating you.
Yeah.
So in your meditation, just do that. Just go in and say, what is it, this thing that looked to me like the need to be special, what is that really? It's about time you stop judging yourself for that. If any of us were to say, all I really want is to be loving, the ego would say that was trying to be pretty special. And yet we know that that's coming from a different place. We all know that forgiveness ultimately means that we look at the thing that we were trying to forgive and recognize that it wasn't real, and so there was nothing there to forgive. But until we get to that, securely get to that place in our awareness, I find it so much more helpful to continue to remind myself that this person that I am attempting to judge is only the character in the story that he's telling. He is not the dream. He is not the dreamer. He is the character in the story. Simply that. So what is there for me to judge? That's always a feeling, isn't it? That I want to give, I want to extend, I want to send. What is the best way you can do that? Hold that love so clearly present in your awareness. Hold it there, and then allow the Holy Spirit. What needs to be done with it will happen. If you join with the character that he's presenting to you in his dream,
Okay.
then you have acknowledged that you are the character in your dream.
Okay.
And neither is true, of course. He is not, you are not. When we do make that judgment of him, that's exactly what we've done. We've joined with the character that we've judged. So by default, we have said that we are the character in our dream. Be certain if you do your part, he will do his. For he will join you where you stand. How can we be certain of that? Because there is only one. What does that mean, there is only one? Does that mean there aren't us sitting here at this table? There isn't a Teddy and a Tom? It doesn't mean that. Now, these are the characters in our story, but let's go back to the character, or to the God entity that is telling the story. Are all of those entities the same? They are, in the one respect, the only one real respect, and that is that they were all created by God and all created to be loved equally. And apart from that, any other distinguishing manifestations or characteristics are irrelevant. And that's what he means when he talks about there only being one of us. I asked Brother about this one time. I was really confused. And he said, but to quiet your ego's need to be individual, let me assure you there are more ways to be the presence of love than there are to be the presence of fear. And I thought about all the ways that I could see the presence of fear, and I felt comforted. Because if there were more than that, that was quite a few. Which is kind of why I like that idea we were talking about the other day. If we could see ourselves as being an adventure in loving, instead of trying to awaken or trying to forgive for this and forgive for that, if we could just be that adventure in loving, how many different ways could we find to love? Wouldn't that be fine? Fun? Fine too, I guess. That would be, I think, very, very entertaining. What is all of that boiling down to?
It sounds like just connecting Holy Spirit to Holy Spirit.
Yeah, he's getting past all of those illusions of differences and bringing us together in those places that we were talking about a moment ago. Bringing us together in the loving place of God's creation, where everything is the same. Joining in the defense becomes the experience of attack. And that's exactly what I experienced the other morning.
Giving reality to the attack, because if I'm not attacked, I wouldn't defend myself.
No, which is what Sam was saying. He didn't feel attacked.
Is there ever a place for assuming responsibility? Other person receives a message.
No. For one thing similar to that, Roger, you are responsible for how you perceive him receiving, but not how he received. And there's quite a distinction in there, I'm sure you can see.
If my intent was spiritual and I sent a message, it would always be received
You would know, yes, that it was always received.
as a spiritual message. It would not be taken asunder.
No, that's true, yes.
I would change the word spiritual, which has many, many connotations to many, many different people, to loving.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I had the impression when you first told that story that you were, in your mind, that you were attempting to send this message that is from a spiritual level, not your egoic level.
When I look back on what I did, I was attempting to use my ego to determine what would be a loving thing to do. In other words, to correct him and show him the error of his ways.
So your ego was masking as the Holy
Yes.
Spirit.
Holy.
In my meditation right after Linda pointed that out to me, I was still thinking, boy, I should have felt like I meant to do something good here. And Brother said, would you mind examining your intention to be loving? And I looked and it was, what intention to be loving? It wasn't there. And that, of course, is the only thing that ever really predetermines what the outcome is going to be. Otherwise, it's an attack. When that challenge appears to be overwhelming, it is for us to recognize that as we allow the God Self to give us a vision of loving instead of trying to use our own, that is how we come together. Because love can't be separate. That's the one thing that we have to constantly reassure ourselves
The
about.
dependency on the Holy Spirit.
Dependency upon the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Because when we see someone, if I see someone and think, boy, do I love them, that's not really love.
Yeah.
Because I'm seeming to feel something for them that I don't feel for someone else. And that's not love. Love is all-inclusive, and it never can be broken down. It can't be separated from one place to the next. It's
We
always
can't make it multiple. We can't make it special.
That's right. We can't make it multiple. That's a key word. Love is one,
Yeah.
and it joins everything in its sight of being one.
I'm just bringing this up because I think most of us think it's the end of the whole body illusion. I'm not sure that that's true. Until we let go of that thought, I'm not sure, just letting the body die is just another chapter in the story.
Death is a chapter in the story. It's all part of the story. It's a part of this world. We think of death, we'd leave this world. This world is a state of mind about being separate. And death is just another way to experience part of that story. The awakening is not about dying. I think I've shared with you that I used to, when this condition began to get worse with me, I would go through a bad day and I would start to question myself, well, is this the day you've chosen? Is this the day you've chosen? And I thought, this is so silly. Why don't I just leave this up to whatever God's plan is? And in the back of my mind, I was thinking, I'll let God decide when I'm going to die. Hard to admit anybody could still be that dense, but so a few days ago, I woke up feeling particularly like it was a bad day. And I said to Brother, is this the day God has chosen for me? And Brother said, you can be assured of one thing. Death plays no part in God's plan. Do you feel the impact of what he's saying there? We are absolutely convinced that this character in our story is who we are. And it's not. This is just a make-believe image in our mind. And it doesn't have anything to do with who we are. If you can let just that simple thought begin to open your mind to a different possibility, my goodness. Just look what the potential is for allowing into your awareness now. If I am not that at all, what am I? If I gave up, I said I don't know. If I just became that open, that willing to take in a different awareness, what would be available to me? That's the part that has struck me so strongly since getting this message. I don't know what that character is. I know what the character is. I don't know who the dreamer is. That's what he keeps talking to us about in the Course. He's always talking about the dreamer. When he says that it's done, or when he says, this is over, you are now this, you are that. Who's he talking about? This character? No. He's talking about the Son of God who is dreaming. But as long as this character occupies all of the place in our awareness, my goodness, no wonder we can't remember anything else. You see, what we're trying to do is to really decide whether or not this world is a state of mind, or if there is something out there happening that we have to respond to. So where is the world? If the world is a state of mind, where is the world? It's in my mind. And so, what am I trying to decide? Not so much how to react to what's happening, but to how to see the thing that I'm reacting to in a way that is loving and caring and a part of God's truth. As difficult as this may seem, as impossible to the ego as this may now seem, it is only happening because I have introduced a thought in my mind that can express itself as the world out here where something terrible is wrong. And this world, this thing out here, can never change until this thing in here has created a different thought for it to coalesce around. You see, we'll never, ever be able to make sense of the atrocities of the world. Never. We're not supposed to. It's put there. We have put it there specifically for the purpose.
That is the hiding place.
That is the one major hiding place. Thank you. Yes, it is. But when Brother tells us in the Course, you don't understand that you are in heaven right now, what does he mean? What does he mean? What do you mean I'm in heaven right now? You see, we've had science fiction relating to us stories of parallel worlds. How true is that? How true is it that there is another world that would seem entirely divorced from this one, that's going on at the same time this one is?
There are things that we can do. It might be not real, but in this illusory world, in this play that we're dreaming up, we can do the right thing.
Yes, if that's what you need, you absolutely can.
Exactly.
You can. If you ask, and you'll be told exactly the thing to do that will be most beneficial for you. Absolutely. But keep in mind, underneath all of this, I keep wanting to stress the fundamental truth. The Course tells us the mind of God is the creation of all things that exist. Within the mind of God exists the putty, the clay, the sticks and stones, the whatever you need to manifest, to make your thought become manifest. That's the mind. That's the power of the mind. The thing that becomes manifest is whatever the thought is that is put into this mind for us to experience. So as long as we are inputting thoughts into the mind of God, we are creating a world that substantiates the validity of those thoughts. But if we were to introduce a different thought into that mind, there would be the same experience of that thought as we have given this thought, and it would seem to replace the other one. And you wouldn't even be looking back and saying, what happened to that other thought? Because your new thought would become reality. Now, the difference between the old thought and the new thought is one that we in a very simplistic way would call love. When you input a thought of fear, we call it a thought of separateness, into the mind of God, you get the experience of a world that validates without question that that fear and that separation is true and real. If you were to accept the so-called vision held by the Holy Spirit of who you are, what would you see? You would see the expression of love that came from God that suddenly looked like you. In other words, God's creation. Now, how would you experience that? You would experience that in the same way that you experienced the other one, that it was all that was true. That's what's valid. Well, that's the distinction between what we call perception and truth. Or we could say between perception and heaven. Heaven. Because heaven is the experience. It's the name we have given to represent the experience of love.
Okay, but so in this world of perception, which isn't really the truth and isn't really what's real, okay, let me put it this way, like the Hindus say that all the world is Maya, it's illusion, right? But they have this word called Lila, it's the play of the illusion. You know, and in that play of the illusion, they say that it's like that they have their like equivalent of the Ten Commandments, which are actually really similar. You know, that love thy neighbor, don't steal, don't these moral kind of precept things. And I understand that that's all in this illusionary world of Maya, which isn't really real. So, and I think I understand. I don't think I understand what you're saying. But so the Course just doesn't deal with in this, because I guess you get stuck in that world of illusion and you start taking it seriously, and then you suffer, and it's not really real anyway. So is that what it's saying? Just
Denny, let me put it this way.
Yeah.
The Course deals with it in a way, in the only way, that the limitation of our mind can relate to it.
So, and what is that? How does it do it? What does it say?
Through a little thing called forgiveness.
Forgiveness, yeah.
It uses forgiveness as a tool to open your mind to see something different. How frequently in the Course do you read, show me how to see this differently? It doesn't, like he's saying in here, and Lord, I don't know how I can miss that. But he's never asked us to change. Never. He's always suggested that there is something different for us to see.
So forgiveness is not doing what not doing what the ego would want to do, but asking to see it differently, which was
the ego says, "Let me fix this, and we'll all be safe and loving, and everything will be okay. Let me fix it."
Yeah, but do I think the ego has done something? I mean, like over time,
Yes.
like they used to.
It has. It's fixed it.
It's fixing.
It's fixing
More
it.
civilized. There's more apparent.
Look at what we've done, Denny. Look at what we've done. We've come from being cave people to people now in spaceships. See, that's our way of fixing it. But what's really changed? Mind has, I say that as though nothing has changed, but there has been something changed. And that has been that our consciousness has become a little more willing to open to an awareness that it has closed itself to before.
Yeah, that we're connected. And that when we look at
And
our
that's the
brother,
one
we're
thing that does,
recognizing
yes.
ourselves. Whereas in the past, I think there was more obvious separation, and everything was the enemy, and we were just in a very primitive way, just out for ourselves. Now we realize that doesn't work. We're in a community, and we've got to act.
And what Brother is saying to us in this, saying to me in this message is, none of that. You're never going to appreciate the reality of any of this until you are willing to love and accept yourself just the way you are right now.
When you made the statement that to accept ourselves the way where we are right now,
Yes.
who is the we that's directed at?
You'll begin to find that out if you do it. See, that's why he's suggesting that, Roger. It's not as though there's something there that I could even describe to you. It's the process that you go through when you make that commitment that leads you there.
I think you're talking about the holy mind.
Well, what I would call the God self.
The
Yes.
God self.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Because it's very easy to listen to you and take that in as this we. It doesn't work.
It will work for a while, but then it wears itself out. And that's what I was going through. I was just feeling myself. It's what Robert Holden was going through when he called and I mean, it was like parroting exactly what my thoughts were. It's what we all go through. It's the process is remarkably the same.
You have agonized a great deal over identifying yourself as a body. I encourage you to let this go. This is but a symptom of your belief you can be separate from what is part of you. In this moment, it does not matter whether you imagine you have a body or not, but it does matter that you love and accept whatever self you see.
Boy, can you feel that? You feel the importance of that. It doesn't matter if you're trying to let go of the body or rationalize, how do I feel without the body? I mean, those are all symptoms. But how important is it for each of us to be able to look inside and see a self that is the perfect creation of God and accept that self? There's a halfway house to accepting or loving yourself that's very effective. Until you can feel comfortable with thinking about loving yourself, think about us loving you.
Well, two things. The one, from our trip, we went to Israel. I know
Right.
everybody knows that. And so I had one amazing experience that was really great, and the other was this fearful experience.
Let's see if we can maybe help you a little bit with that. What was the difference between the two experiences that you've just described?
I was able to move to a place of love versus fear.
And what was there another difference?
Well, I seeked for connectedness versus separation and disconnect.
Yeah, but what led you to maybe make the choice on the one hand and not be able to make the choice on the other hand? Now, if you had given both of those the same, let's say, value in your mind, what would have been the difference between the two?
I'm not really understanding it here.
What I'm saying is that in the first case, you discovered that as you changed your mind, your experience changed. And you could have as easily done the same thing in the second case. As you changed your mind, your experience would have changed. But in the one hand, you felt safe, even though the child may not have responded to you. And in the other case, you felt out of control. And that's where we can really allow ourselves to see things entirely different. Because there is no difference between the two experiences. Both gave you an opportunity for you to choose what you wanted as an outcome. Both. Now, if you had allowed yourself to see them the same, then you would have known that you could have chosen either one and had a like outcome. So we ask ourselves, why would I be willing to do it on the one hand and not the other? And the answer is, you don't have to do it in either case. You could have called upon the Holy Spirit, the God Self, to come and make that choice for you, to allow you to feel more safe. But that choice doesn't appeal to us simply because we don't trust it. Believe it or not, we don't trust God, the Holy Spirit, the God Self. We don't trust that as much as we trust our ego. So when that choice seems to rise up in your mind, begin by asking yourself, who will I choose to trust? And when you consciously make the choice for the God Self, you are turning to that source of feeling, that source of knowing. And when you do, you'll find that it's present. We don't because we've just gotten into this habit of saying, well, if I can't get myself out of this, I know God sure won't. And the more we exercise it during the day, when we don't seem to be out of control, the more the habit takes shape. But it's when we only call upon it when we do feel threatened. When that's a little unfair, wouldn't you think? Because you're not available at that point. You haven't developed the trust. So there's a good example that in Helen Schuchman's, the author of the Course, in her experience one time shopping with brother. And she was looking for a coat of some kind, and she walked around, couldn't find it. Finally she said, "Do you have any ideas?" And he said, "Yeah, if you'll go right over there, you'll find it." So she went over there and she found it. Now what was that, to help her find the coat? No, it was to reinforce with her the same thing we're talking about. That when we make a habit of asking our guidance, then we learn to trust and depend upon it. And when we don't, you see, you build the trust by asking and receiving and then looking back upon it and thinking, oh my goodness, that did work. That did work, son of a gun. And so you do it again and again and again until suddenly now you've built up a validation for that trust. How hard is it for us to accept that the world exists in our mind? And why is it so hard to accept that? What would you have to hide if you didn't feel as though you had done something wrong? It's the old concept of sin and separation. It's because we need to be separate. We need to have the world out here not as a reflection of who we are, but so we can compare ourselves to it. Forgiveness. That little tool of forgiveness. It always comes back to that.
How do we always go to this place of self-blame? I mean,
It's probably the question most asked and has the least, to me, acceptable answer in the entire course. Brother tells us it was the moment when a tiny mad idea entered the mind of God. And we forgot to laugh. The illustration of that is the Garden of Eden story. The belief that we were all existing in this happy place, loving one another, and nothing ever went wrong until God said, don't do that, and we did it anyway. And so we separated ourselves from His love.
Because we've done something wrong.
Yes. And what the Course tells us, of course, is that that tiny mad idea was only that. It never happened.
So the essence of that is we thought we did something wrong. God never saw it that way.
God never saw it that way.
So we separated from God.
No, we tried to.
We tried, okay.
Yes, we tried to separate from God.
It's the insane belief that we succeeded.
Yes.
That's the insanity of it.
Yeah.
That we could, in fact, change what God created.
Yeah.
Doesn't that alter the way you envision your so-called awakening? Doesn't that take it out of the realm of what do I need to do?
Yeah. Accept.
And just depend upon letting go of what you thought you did?
Which is forgiveness.
That's forgiveness.
Yeah.
That's the whole meaning, Sam, of forgiveness. And that's why it's so important for us to know that the world exists in our mind and not in some outside area, not in some place created by God. Only if we take full responsibility for creating these crazy thoughts are we going to feel empowered to change them. And how will you change them? By forgiving your brother for his thinking that he did something himself.